Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Today we have as guest Mr. Bryson Haynes. Mr. Haynes, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
Glad to be here. Thank you for the invite, Dr. Cross.
Man, it's a pleasure. But for those who are here with us, before we get started, please share this with your connection, with your network. I can guarantee you, you will get something from this conversation today. And for those who are here for the first time, and even those who have been here before, my name is Dr. Richard A. Cross, and I'm the founder of the Black Male Impact. And I will share just a little of about Mr. Haynes before I give him the opportunity or the platform to share more about himself. So Mr. Haynes is the Senior Director of Education, Youth Development with the Urban League, and he has been with the Urban League for over 2 years, and he's also the CEO of Teach One Athletics. So before we get into the conversation today, and even before I even pass it over to Mr. Ames, this conversation is about exceptional expectation, defied conventional expectations. So, Mr. Ains, please go ahead and share more about yourself with the listeners.
Yeah, no. What you see is what you get. Bryson Haynes, like you mentioned, Dr. Cross, Senior Director of Education and Youth Development here at the Urban League of Greater Cleveland, also the CEO of Teach One Athletics. I'm originally from Pasadena, California. I'm pretty sure if you didn't know about Pasadena, Altadena area, you probably heard about it over the news at the beginning of the year with the tragic fires that happened. From Southern California, born and raised, grew up like any other, black young man in the inner city. You want to play sports. And so sports was something that I gravitated to. Baseball was my first sport. And then I started to get a little taller and fell in love with the game of basketball. And so, basketball helped shape me, mentors, coaches, and things that were able to pour into me, over my playing career, had the opportunity to, go the unconventional route as it pertains to, basketball, where I played, at a JUCO first, that's junior college, which most players, don't think that they should be going to, or they're too good to play at the junior college level. I mean, any level beyond high school is top notch. It's tough everywhere. And so I had the opportunity to do that. Had a Division II scholarship, and unfortunately, like many athletes, you get injured, and then you try to figure out your identity about yourself, because your whole life has been surrounded around, what you were going to do and what you were going to be instead of who you currently were. And so, from that begin to transition into, becoming an adult and having to find, income and something to do. And so, had the opportunity to, pour back into, where I came from, which is the Boys and Girls Club of Pasadena, and, started volunteering there and got my first job there. And that kind of catapulted me into, where I sit now, and having, I would say, experienced maybe 4 or 5 different lives in the 42 years that I've been here. I've learned a lot along the way, and I continue to want to pass it on to inspire, other people, specifically young people, to be the best version of themselves.
Man, that's a journey, and
Yeah.
I can relate. Being an athlete, and you start out thinking that you're going to be a professional athlete.
Hmm.
Although I don't know if I had that aspiration, but I got a scholarship, to Division II as a track
Hmm.
athlete.
Hmm.
But I think I was just going through the motion. Although people may think that everybody wants to
Hmm.
be a professional athlete, and it's a great thing to be a professional athlete because it can change your life, and not only your life, but your family, and and become an inspiration to those around you. So I understand. Not that I really got injury, but I was able to finish Division II,
Yeah.
doing track. But today's conversation is about talking about how we break barriers, how we defy conventional expectations. And for some of us, we have been placed in positions where people think less of us. And and most of us have break through those limitations to be where we are in life. So my first question to you, which is on personal journey and breaking the norm, can you share your story and what led you to break away from the traditional path? I know you kind of shared your story earlier,
Mhm.
but what kind of led you to break away from, what you see around you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, my upbringing was unconventional. Um, I went to four elementary schools, four middle schools, four high schools, and four colleges. And so I moved around a lot, and was raised by a multitude of people. First, obviously, being my parents when they were together. And then, unfortunately, when they divorced when I was about seven, I went and lived with my father for a couple of years. And then I was raised by my great grandmother up until I was finished the fifth grade. Then I moved with my mom during middle school, so back and forth between her and my dad in my middle school years, and even had the experience of actually living in foster care in a group home for a period of time during my middle school, years. Then get to ninth grade, transition back to my mom's house. Like every other teenage young man, you start feeling yourself and smelling yourself. And my mom saw that, and so it was time for me to go move with my dad, permanently. And that was an experience within itself, having lived with my dad, during high school. And so that kind of shaped, my ability to navigate different spaces. Having grown up in Southern California, it's a melting pot. Having lived in Pasadena, having lived in the LA area, you're around every, race of people. And so I went to school with, all whites. I went to school with Hispanics. I went to school with Asians. I went to school with blacks. And so I was always in a different environment where I had to, try to figure out how to fit in, and how to navigate the space of the unknown, living in a, unfamiliar city or circumstance, or even being in a new, different environment as far as my home and having to adhere to the rules of the adult in the household. And so having experience, as a young man growing up, with a grandmother, and anyone that has ever experienced their grandmother, you're going to be spoiled by, your grandmother. And so my great grandmother spoiled me, when I was a young pup, made sure I had breakfast cooked, lunch, dinner cooked, all those type of things. And then transition to live with my mom, who is a pastor, and so now you're living in an environment to where now you become a PK, and maybe what you were accustomed to doing, being exposed to, listening to how you were able to navigate and move around, now is condensed, because now you're being introduced to God, through the Bible, through Christianity. And so going through that phase, and then getting into high school, where now I'm living with my dad, and now it's two males in a house. And you can imagine, I mean, you think, I would say, related to, the movie Boys in the Hood, where Lawrence Fishburne's character, and Cuban Gooding's character, they collide at this pivotal moment in high school, where it's two males just really trying to figure out life. And of course, the father has all of this wisdom, and this young man is just trying to navigate his high school journey. And so that, in a nutshell, was, my experience, with my father. Um, and then, like a lot of young men, once they are finished with their, athletic career, collegiate career, whatever that looks like, then you find out what adulthood is really like. And for me, I was, had my first son when I was 21, getting ready to be 22. And a month prior to my first son being born, my father passed away. And so
Wow.
you're talking about me coming of age as learning how to be a young man, a man in itself, then learning I'm going to be a father. And then right before I become a father, my father passes. And so really having to navigate that space of, okay, now I'm in an unfamiliar territory of being the first time, without my father, and I'm becoming a father for the very first time. And what does that entail? And you're talking about in a time where, mental health, where depression, anxiety, suicide, all of those things were not talked about, especially in our community. I mean, they're starting to be a little bit more broadcasted now, but
Right.
back in the early 2000s, there was no mention of that. And you're talking about support groups and peer groups. You know, there was no friends that were of my age that I can go to and talk about what I was dealing with most, emotionally and mentally. And so I had to navigate those spaces on my own a lot of times. And, from that, I learned a lot about myself. I learned about, the people around me, and just how to keep fighting and resiliency and continue to, to keep going forward. And from that, can just continue to learn, based on mistakes, bad decisions, relationships, things of that nature. But I know I always had a solid foundation just, in the family unit. And then because of those middle school years, my foundation, my principles really was rooted in my faith. And so that helped carry me through, to eventually, getting married in 2011, leaving California, what I had no plans on ever doing. Haven't been there 30 years of my life. But my wife is from Atlanta, and so she wanted to move back to Atlanta. So that was another transition where I had to go to an unfamiliar place that I really didn't know anybody. I didn't have a job waiting for me. But I knew that if I, put my mind to it, if I put my foot on the ground, that I would eventually find my way. And I did. And so I got, was into education. I was still heavy into sports and wanting to give back, from a basketball standpoint. And so in 2015, that's when I created Teach One Athletics, which was really about, training more of the mind and less of the body. Of course, I, train athletes on their development, specifically around basketball and their body, but I really wanted to provide an opportunity to mentor, and be that coach that so many coaches were to me as I was growing up and playing sports. And so that also led me to an opportunity to work with the Atlanta Hawks for 5 years. And so I was able to do that. And, being able to be around, the NBA. And so, when you talk about dreams being deferred, my goal was to make it to the NBA, but
Right.
I was able to be and get to the NBA on the other side. Not as actually as a player, but to be in the business of basketball and understanding the community side and impact side as it pertains to the business of basketball. And so, I made my dream come true. Just with, it just didn't look like your traditional dream that most athletes have. And so, being able to do that for 5 years. And during COVID, I made the decision to uproot my entire family and move to Cleveland during COVID.
Wow.
And so you're talking about coming from sunny California to hot Atlanta, and now I'm in cold Cleveland. And
Yeah.
so that was a shock, of getting here, moving my family here, and within I think the first week we were here, it was a big snowstorm,
Wow.
and I had no snow blower, no snow shovel, no anything like that. And people were looking at me. I was out there with just a garden shovel getting the snow out of my driveway. And so, just being able to learn, as I, travel down this road and this experience, having worked with the cast for a couple of years, and then, it led me to being here at the Urban League, where, I've always been about community. I've always been about young people and just pouring back. And I'm able to do that, in any entity, any, program that I'm involved in, any organization that I'm involved in. And so I understand what my passion is, what my purpose is. And I've understood that for a very long time. And now I feel like I'm just walking in it.
And just listening to your journey from, California to Cleveland, to Atlanta to Cleveland, I've heard, you talk about the challenges that you have experienced and how you get through them. But what we didn't hear is how did you deal with those challenges that you face on your journey,
Mhm.
um, to help those who may be, facing challenges of their own. So
Yeah.
how did you, step past or get over,
Yeah.
those challenges?
So yeah, those challenges were tough. I mean, those weren't easy challenges to get over, and I didn't have the answers at that particular moment. But I always believed in myself. I always believed that whatever it is I put my mind to, I could achieve it. And I remember one thing that my dad will always taught me. He said, "Whatever you do, be the best at it." And so that was kind of what I live by, and a kind of a principle I stood on when those challenging times came. And they continue to come very frequently and very often. I've lost a lot of people in my life that have been close to me whether that be from death, whether that be from just, separation of proximity. And it was tough navigating that space, when you're talking about somebody who moved around a lot and had to gain new friends, and new circles and new environments. Losing people was something that, was very harmful, to me at my early age, and even, into my young adulthood. But I was able to, navigate that just by standing on some of the principles that, my elders taught me, the mentors that, stayed in my corner, that I continue to call to this day, that I could just pick up the phone and say, I don't have the answers. I don't have it all today. I'm struggling. I'm thinking about giving up, and surrounding myself around people that continue to pour into me and, would speak things over me that I didn't believe in myself at that very moment. And that was very, very pivotal, for me in my life, as I continue to matriculate through this, through this thing that we call life, and being able to stand also, on my faith as well.
Man, that's that's a great way, especially with the challenges. Some things we cannot control, as it goes back to the people that you have met on your journey, and also your faith, because life is going to happen. Things are going to happen that we have no control over, and we still have to navigate our way regardless of those challenges. So I know you have shared, you got injured, wanted to play basketball. Your father passed away when you were just about to become a father yourself. So which one of those pivot moments you would consider a pivotal moment that helped you to forge your own path, or it could be something else? So which pivotal experience
I
make
would,
you
I would,
change?
yeah, I would definitely say the passing of my father by a landslide. Um, and when I, think back and over time, as I looked at, I would say the months, the weeks leading up, to my father's death, he was preparing me and I had no idea.
Wow.
One of the stories that I share is that when my dad, left California and moved to Vegas right before he passed, he had a storage in California. So I would go, make sure and check on the storage every so often. And I remember the last time that I actually saw him able-bodied up and speaking. He came to his storage. He was, doing some things. I wasn't with him at the time. But I remember him, saying, "Hey, I came to the storage. I got some, some things in order, and everything is in a cabinet." And I remember he just kept saying, "There's two-drawer cabinet." And so when my father actually did pass away, I remember I had to go to, to the storage locker, and as soon as I opened it up, and before I opened, I was like, okay, I know I got to find this two, drawer cabinet, and it's probably here amongst all this stuff, and I have to take everything out and look for it. When I opened it, it was sitting right there, literally as if my dad moved it to the front, knowing that everything that I needed to take care of, his passing and arrangements and things like that, it would be in that, in that storage, in that cabinet. And so by far that, put me on a trajectory of losing one of, if not the most important person in my life at that particular moment. And I had no way or nowhere to go but up. And knowing that, number one, I had a son that I was getting ready to have. And so, you know, the pro and con is that I had something to live for and someone to live for. Um, but it didn't give me this space to grieve or to really address how I was feeling losing my father. And so dealing with that, in my young adulthood kind of drove this, you know, hot, cold, moments to where I had something that I knew I was striving for, but I still suffered with this hurt and pain that I had to overcome. And it wasn't until I got into, later in my years in adulthood where I really started to address those things in therapy, where I was able to then bring up how I was feeling with what I was chasing, and being able to then pursue, you know, um, healing and healthiness, in mind, body, and spirit.
And as you talk about, the healing and those experiences, and you're right, it's just of lately us as men, especially black men, start to talk about, the challenges that we are dealing with on our journey. Because at first, we have been conditioned
Mhm,
to internalize those challenges and sharing um, the challenges that we're dealing with, it would consider weak.
mhm,
And as men, we don't want to be seen as weak. But I'm glad that you share, that you find benefit in, going through that process, which today it's becoming a bit easier for us as Black men to, talk about the challenges, go and seek help and seek support, because it's not really so much of a taboo today
mhm.
as it used to be. But I want to ask this question: what societal norms did you consciously decide to reject, and why?
Ooh, I checked the box of a lot of societal norms. Inner city kid, wanting to make it to the NBA. You know, that not happen. Have a child out of wedlock. Don't finish college. I guess in a time frame. I guess I met every societal norm, but I didn't let those things define who I was.
Okay.
And I knew that I was bigger, and that I had more to give, not only myself, but my oldest son at the time, and then all of the young people and kids around that I was working with. And so that, gave me the opportunity to use my story, to use my, societal norms, or what people think, as a black man, the traps that you can fall in. I fell in most of them. Um, but I allowed that to be my platform that I stood on, to say that, no matter what you go through, as long as you have breath in your lungs, it's never too late, to get things right, to make changes. I mean, I'm 42 with braces. And so, most people were like, well, you're too old to get braces. Well, it's never too late, to fix my teeth. I didn't actually graduate from college with my undergrad until I was about 35. And
Wow.
so you're talking about not to the traditional avenue or route. Yeah, I made a lot of the same mistakes that we see young men make. But fortunately for me, I have people that are praying for me. Number one, I have people who stood by me through those moments. Um, and then I was able to secure and be positive in my passion and my purpose. And as long as I allow that to be my north star, the societal norms, don't bother me, and I don't want it to bother anybody else that may have made a mistake, or may have been, put in a situation to where they may have, checked the box of what society says we are as black men, or as black people in general. And I think using that as my superpower to say, beyond that, I'm still a success story.
Well, and that's a great way about challenges at times. We can use them if we so choose to use them
Mm-hmm.
as something positive, because sometimes, we experience these difficulties, these adversities, not so much for ourselves personally, but to help those who may think they cannot go through or come over, or get past the challenges that they're experiencing. So sometimes some of us have to go through those adversities to help others to believe that they can go through it.
Mm-hmm.
But as you were talking about, those adversities and those societal expectations or norms that you have fallen into as a black male, so I want to ask this question, which is on resilience and overcoming barriers, because you had to overcome some barriers and find yourself in those moments. So how did you navigate moments of doubt or fear when making unconventional choices? Because being that you went back to college and graduated at 35,
Mm-hmm.
how did you deal with doubt and fear in the process?
Yes, I mean that in itself. having gone the traditional route of school of what do? You go into a classroom, you allow lectures, and then you regurgitate the information that you got. Um, when I finished my undergrad, I finished through the University of Phoenix, and I did online. And I was like, how, as a person who is an extrovert, who likes talking, who likes being in front of people, who likes engaging with people, how will I do that online, where it's just me and the information?
Yeah.
And that was very, very scary for me. Of like, okay, now I'm getting out of my comfort zone. But have been out of my comfort zone so many times, and so I always had to reflect on some of the challenges, the circumstances, and how I overcame some of those challenges, and continue to remind myself that this is just a part of the process. One thing that I always, have lived by, I would say for the last couple of years, and that I always share with my students, or when I'm speaking in front of people, one of my, favorite, poets, musical poets, is Nipsey Hussle. And one of the things he said success is when opportunity meets preparation. And so every challenge that I went through, every time I moved, every school, every new, crew that I had to develop and engage with, that was preparing me for the real world. That was preparing me to fall back on, hey, I overcame that, moving to, having moved to, and gone to 4 different elementary schools, 4 middle schools, 4 high schools, 4 colleges. you know, I was able to get through that. I was able to get, through living in foster care, and, living in a group home, and being raised with my great grandmother, my mom, my dad. Like, every step away, all I had to do was go back and look at the challenges. All I had to do is go back and look how far I came. And I knew that I could overcome those obstacles. I knew that, okay, hey, I might be fearful to go back, and maybe embarrassing to go back to college at 30 some years old and said, I want to finish my undergrad. But that's something that, I wanted to do for myself. But it's also something that I saw my mother do, as she finished her degree later in life. And so it allowed me to say, okay, if my mom can do it, then I definitely can do it, and not be ashamed of it. And fortunately for me, I was able to do that, graduate, walk across that stage in front, and not only in front of, only for myself, but my mom was able to travel and be able to see me walk across that stage. My wife was able to see me, and my 2 sons at the time were able to see me walk across the stage and achieve something. And it didn't matter to them that I was 35 receiving my bachelor's. It mattered to them that they saw dad chase something, lock in, be disciplined about it, even in the midst of fear, anxiety, and all those other things, and come out on the other side and achieve his dream and his goal, of obtaining that degree.
Oh yeah, man, that is inspirational, not only for your sons, but also for young men out there who may be thinking that it's too late to go after that um, dream, that educational pursuit. Because some think, after you pass 24, so maybe, that dream
Mm-hmm.
is no longer out there or achievable, but it is achievable. And you have proved it. And not only, just to achieve the degree, but you also show your sons and other young men the value of education, which is, a tool that can really help us to navigate our own life and to move up in life, because education is the greatest equalizer.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we don't talk about education enough and how valuable it is.
Mm-hmm.
But education is the greatest equalizer. It can help you to change your life, your
Yeah.
family life, and also your community. So my next question to you, as you were going through, those challenges, as you were preparing yourself for what you want to achieve, how did you handle criticism or skepticism from others, especially from within your own community? Did you have people around you start to doubt you, man? Why are you going back at this time, and those kind of things?
Yeah, I did, but I never let it bother me because I'm my worst critic. Um, Being an athlete, like, when you're chasing greatness, when you're chasing the Michael Jordans of the world, you're harder on yourself than anybody could ever be. And so, of course, I had people question my decisions, when I left California, when I decided to leave my job, in Atlanta and start my own company. There were questions. There were questions around why would I leave, Atlanta and come to Cleveland? Why would I leave the NBA and work at a nonprofit where my salary is not guaranteed year over year? Um, but I'm my worst critic. And so nobody could ever be harder than me, harder on me than I can myself. Um, and so, I just, surpassed it. And I said, at the end of the day, if I can wake up and look myself in the mirror and be proud of the person that I see, then it doesn't matter what anybody else says about me. When I was, coming up and when I was in my young adulthood, yeah, I mean, it stung when people would doubt, when people would question, why are you, trying to make it to the NBA? You're not good enough. Why? How do you think you're going to get a Division I scholarship? You went to 4 different high schools. Nobody's looking for you. You played at a small high school in a city that had 2 other big high schools in it. Like, nobody's checking for you. And at that moment, yeah, it hurt. But then I, had to tap into, that inner me of, hey, as long as I can satisfy myself and making
Right.
sure that, hey, I'm putting in the effort and I'm putting in the work, then the sky is the limit. And for me, I took that mantra of on the basketball court of, hey, I may not be the tallest, the fastest, can shoot the best, but nobody will ever outwork me. And that was kind of what I hung my hat on as it pertains to, my life as an athlete. And I just transferred that into the real world practice, is that, as long as I knew that I gave it my all and I worked hard, you know, let the chips fall where they may.
Oh yeah, you have to have that mindset. And I was talking to, I think, the last conversation I have here, the gentleman, he was also an athlete, and I was telling him that being an athlete really prepares you for life, because you have to have that inner drive to be a good athlete, to get something out of it. Because if you are only dependent on the coach to push you, you're not going to be the best you. You have to want it
Mhm.
more, even more than the coach,
Yes.
for you to, develop yourself, for you to become who you're capable of, or even to be the best amongst the best. Because everybody going for it, but it's those who with the self motivation, that inner drive, really makes the difference, make the cut. Because it's not just talent, it's your drive to achieve what you are pursuing. And that leads me to this questions. Although this is not really about athletics,
Mhm.
but it can relate. What sacrifices did you have to make in order to stay true to your vision?
Oh, ooh, had to leave home. Yeah. Leaving home, leaving California was definitely, something that, I wasn't prepared to do. But I'm glad I did it. And it that definitely stretched me. In a way that I hadn't been stretched, I would say, since my father's, passing. Um, and so, it just it continues to kind of be, that mantra and that expectation of myself, that no matter what situation or circumstance that I'm in, as long as I surround myself around, people that, are pouring into me, and that I continue to pour into others, it gives me the responsibility to know that people are looking up to me and depending on me, um, you know, to be able to share that story, to be able to say, hey, if Bryson can make it, if Coach B can make it, if Mr. B can make it, um, then I can. If he can go through this, if he can look like this, if he could, talk like this, sound like this, dress like this, then there's hope for me. Because we all come, we're not, monolithic. And so we, can come in all different forms and all different presentations. And I think we all need each other's, individuality, in that, to be able to have, the type of mindset, as it pertains to being a black man here in America. And we need each other, and need to continuously lean on each other. And I know, I was going off topic, just but that's my answer to that, and kind of where I put the onus on that.
Well, yeah, as you know, to stay true to ourselves, sometimes we have to leave our comfort zone.
Hmm.
Because we may not have the people around us that we need in that moment to get to where we want. Especially those when people start to doubt us, especially when people start to, criticize us for the dreams that we want, the things that we want to accomplish. And if we stay within those environments and those spaces, we succumb to the limitations.
Hmm.
Maybe they're not saying it to ourselves, to us, but we haven't challenged ourselves because this is comfort and this is where we want to stay.
Hmm.
And sometimes just leaving those spaces will be what help to experience the transformation that we want to experience. I'm just going to shift gear a little bit from resilience to redefining success and impact. So, my first question to you is on redefining success. How do you define success, and how has that definition changed over time?
I define success is by getting up every single day and being able to do what you love. That's what I determine success as for me. What I thought success was what every typical young man thinks: money, having a bunch of it, having the notoriety, being famous, having access to women, houses, cars, jewelry, the things that continue to plague a lot of our young men, a lot of our young people just in general. I thought that was success. Um, but being able to also be in front of those individuals and be in environments where I was around NBA players that made millions and millions and millions of dollars, that I was around people within the music industry that made tons and tons of money, and they were just normal people that just happened to find their success not in what they made, or what they were able to achieve, but the fact that they were able to get up each morning and do what they love to do, and that they would do it for free.
Yeah.
If money was not an object and something that we need. And so my success is determined specifically by that I get to wake up every day and figure out how can I impact my community, and how can I serve the young people in the community that I reside and work in. And so it never feels like work. It feels like I'm just living life and being able to empower others to become the best version of themselves. And that's what success looks like for me. And so the definition of success for anyone, they have to be able to identify and define that for themselves, and not look to outside sources or outside people to define what success is for you, but to look at what does success mean for me. And that can mean a plethora of different things. And once you identify that, and as well as your purpose, then you'll be on the trajectory of the success that you very so are striving for.
Well, and that's well said. As you define success and how most of us have been taught what success is. But I've seen and I've read stories where individuals have become really successful financially, and they become have this feeling of loss. It's like life, they have the money, but life is not what they think it should be.
Hmm.
And some had to resort to start giving back because that's where they find purpose, that's where they find fulfillment, not so much of having all the money or access to everything that they think they want. And as you just said, it's on us to really make sure we define success, how that is to us as individuals. Because if you are about giving back, if you are about helping others, if you are about community building or whatever it is for you, I think that's important because what it boils down to is you feeling fulfilled as an individual when it comes to whatever you want to define success as. So I appreciate that perspective because a lot of people still struggle with what success is.
Hmm.
Although, having money is not an issue,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So, but my next question to you in the same category of redefining success: what misconceptions do you think people have about success, especially for Black men?
Misconception about success is that all black men want the same thing, um, and that we are all money driven, that we are all coming from poverty, or that we all come from the societal norms. And that's just not true. And being able to identify again what success looks like for each individual and allowing them to define for themselves what they believe success is for them. And I think, as an athlete, we see it all the time. If an athlete doesn't, you know, get 6 rings like MJ, or win, a certain amount of MVPs like LeBron, then you're not successful. Okay, well, you're comparing someone else's success versus mine. If my only goal was to make it to the NBA, then I believe I'm successful because I made my dream come true. Now, once I got into that dream, if I had other goals and aspirations, to do, then, we'll address that. But I think for the most part, it's been okay. I just want to make it to the league. All right, you make it to the league, so then you're successful.
Correct.
But really identifying, your own success. Um, and the misconception, as it pertains to black men, is that we don't feel, and we feel very much.
Correct.
We are human beings first,
Yeah.
and so we have every emotion. We have, moments of doubt, fear, anxiety, all of those things that every human may feel based on the human experience. And because we always try to present ourselves in a strong manner, is a misconception that we always have it together.
Correct.
We don't. And you never know what the next man is going through or dealing with, in whatever situation or circumstances that you may be in, and sharing that space with, and giving each other grace and space, to be able to have those support groups, to be able to have that therapist, to be able to have that friend, that you can call at any time and say, hey, I don't have it today. Or, I'm struggling with making a decision and I just need, some encouragement. I need some feedback, or, I need, just some wisdom. And wisdom can come from all, forms. I get wisdom from my kids all the time. It doesn't matter about age.
Yeah.
It just matters about perspective, and always willing to learn. And so I think, one of the biggest misconceptions about black men is that we don't feel, and that we don't, have a heart, and don't have emotions. We do. It's just we are now getting to the space, which we still have a far, way to go, of being able to advocate for ourselves, number one, and being able to being put in circumstances, situations where we can heal from trauma that whether we caused on our own, or trauma that other people surrounded us around based on our environment.
Well, yes, and to the point that you have made, especially when it comes to success and what we want, all men want the same thing. All Black men want the same thing. So they put us in a category. And the next thing that you have said, and I've seen that recently with the NFL draft, where they think all Black men is coming from poverty.
Mhm.
And when you're supposed to show up humble and not so confident.
Mhm.
So they put us in a box, and once we are not operating within that box, you can be pushed aside or being, um, without saying no, put in a position to be taught a lesson and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So there are different things when it comes to us, and we have to realize that society do put us in a box, and how we navigate our way based on what we have been placed in, and to make sure we have the best going forward.
Mhm.
And that comes from having those awareness, what society expect of me, and how am I going to navigate this journey or this world or life, based on the expectation society placed on me. So my next question to you is, What unconventional strategies or habit have been key to your achievement?
Vision board. Um, I did an exercise during one of our programs this past summer, and I asked, we had about 40 young men in the room, all high school age. And I asked them, have any of you ever done a vision board? No one raised their hand.
Wow.
Um, and understanding that, the Bible tells us to write the vision and make it plain so that he who inherits it, that gets it, can run with it. And I think one of the biggest things that we lack um, as Black men is taking our vision and putting it on paper. So many of us are visionaries and we can speak it, we can put it out in the atmosphere, but it's about, okay, are we putting it on paper so that it's transferred then to action?
Correct.
And one of the things that I was able to do, and I would say I started this in about 2018, was start vision boarding. So I remember the first time I did a vision board
Sorry.
with my wife. We did our own separate vision boards, and I had I wanted to move up in my career. I wanted to you know switch teams in the NBA. So at the time I was working with the Atlanta Hawks. I wanted to buy another house. I wanted to have speaking engagements. I wanted to write a book. I wanted to do, certain type of things. And so I put it on this vision board, put pictures on it, and I put it in my bathroom. So every morning that I woke up and every night that I went to sleep, I could see it. Everything on that vision board in that first year has come to pass, and I have done a vision board since then. And so when you're talking about writing the vision, when you're talking about seeing it, that's an unconventional way as it pertains to us as Black men. I know a lot of us are visionaries, but you'll very seldomly find a lot of Black men who actually write things down and actually can, write it down, make a vision for it, and put the plan of action to it. And then, because that's something that you're held accountable to. And
Correct.
so it's easy to be held. It's easier to not be held accountable if you're just talking. Then you could say, "Oh, I don't remember saying that," or "Oh, I didn't say that." But once you put it on paper, once you put it in an email, once you put it out on social media, now you're held accountable not only to what you've put down on paper, but then to other people who have also seen it. And so it holds you accountable to make sure that, okay, am I doing the necessary things that I need to do every single day to make this dream, um, come to fruition, or to make, this a success, is because I'm being prepared in this season for whenever this opportunity presents itself. It's something I had already been doing. It's just now in a different space, or maybe it's on a bigger scale.
Well, and it's great that you bring that up with vision board or vision boarding and stuff like that, because we do have the desire to achieve things, and if we don't write it down, we may not take action
Mhm.
towards it. And I came across a quote when I just started teaching that says, "The palest ink is sharper than the best memory."
Mm.
So even if you think you will remember, even if the ink is not in the pen and you just write, it's going to leave a mark of what you want. And we always have to, as you said, we always have to know that if we're going to achieve something, we need to have it there so we can, work towards it. Because if but it goes back to, from the biblical times, the biblical terms, as if we don't have a vision, write the vision and make it plain.
Mhm.
So once we have something that we want to pursue, it give us that drive, that motivation, sorry, to, work towards, that which you want um, to accomplish. But as you stated, you have proven that having the vision board, having the things in front of you that you want to accomplish, give you that motivation, and for you to see those things come true, give you extra motivation, to go after other goals and say, what, those dreams came through. So these dreams can also come true. Sorry. And I'm really glad that you bring up vision board, because I don't think a lot of us do talk about vision board,
Hmm.
and that's a powerful way of navigating our journey. By knowing what we want and working towards it, but not just knowing it in our heads, but have it in front of us as a reminder for what we want. And as you mentioned, accountability. That is important. That is important when it comes to achieving goals. Not just saying it, but doing it and knowing someone will know that we didn't do what we said we were going to do,
Hmm.
which is really important. So my next question to you is: how have you used your success to empower others, particularly young Black men?
As a young Black man myself, and I could still guess consider myself young. I mean, it's what I do every day of my life. I have three sons, and so right there, that is going to be my first initial incubator of pouring in what I know, um, the missteps, the mistakes that I made, and how I'm able to determine my success for my sons, not based on what I have, but for the simple fact that I get up every single day and I get to, do what I love to do. And I get to bring my sons along the ride, on the journey that they're able to be a part of some of the programming that I'm doing, not necessarily as participants, but as witnesses of this is what daddy does each and every day. He, looks for opportunities to inspire, looks for opportunities to encourage, to mentor, to learn from, um, the young people I serve. Um, and and so that has become, something that I do just by nature of what was done for me as a young Black man, of having coaches and mentors and people that, looked out for me and poured into me. And so I'm able to do that every single day. And I happen to make a living doing it. And so it's a win-win situation for me, that even if I wasn't getting paid, and, you know, people always, I'm pretty sure we all have had that. Oh, if I win the lottery, what would I do? Um, if I won the lottery, I would do exactly what I'm doing now. Nothing
Right.
would change other than maybe where I did it, how big of a scale I can build it, because now I have the resources to be able to do it. But this is my life's work, um, and until I'm called to do something else. I mean, I've been involved with young people for 20 plus years, and I've worked with Black males for that 20 plus years in many different facets, whether that be as their basketball coach, as their mentor, as their behavior support specialist, as their after school program director, um, as their senior director, as their director, in whatever capacity that I'm feeling. I'm always looking for an opportunity to pour into a young Black man, whether that they be younger than me, whether that be adjacent to me in age. Iron sharpens iron.
Correct.
And so I look at us as Black men as steel. And so we need each other to sharpen each other, to hold each other accountable, to hold each other up, to support one another when we are doing the great things, and then call each other out when we're doing the things that are harmful to ourselves and our community.
Yeah, and that's indeed. We need to hold each other accountable, and not just to the good things, but also when we see the things that are not beneficial to us or the community.
Hmm.
That is important, and that's one thing that we have to really take serious, because some things are not going to change if we don't change it, and we cannot expect others to do things for us that we are not willing to do for ourselves. We can talk as much as we want, but we must do the things that will benefit us. And if others come on board and help, to create those change, yes, but we have to take the initiative to creating the change that we want, and again, hold each other accountable. So my next question to you, which is not somewhat being accountable or holding others accountable, but yet it can be, because what skills or mindset shift do you believe are essential for young men looking to create their own path?
I think the first thing is to be rooted and grounded in something, as it pertains to, your faith. I think the second thing is having emotional intelligence, to understand how to navigate and use your emotions to your benefit, and not allowing your emotions to rule and control your decision making. I think of having discipline, to be able to get up and do the things you don't want to do so that you can get the things that you want. And so that's one of the things, is really, having that mindset that, hey, I may not get a win today, but I'm still going to put in the necessary work. And it goes back to success is when opportunity meets preparation. Um, and so alluding to what are you doing in the off season and whatever your off season may look like. Because there are off seasons or seasons where it may be lighter than others. Or are you taking on things and opportunities to learn, grow, and stretch yourself so that you can put yourself, in a better situation or circumstance, or that circumstance will present itself to you. And so many times we want success or we want to go to that next level. We want that promotion. But there's no way that I could have been a senior director if I wasn't operating as a senior director before I got this title. I had to have that mindset that I was going to operate, I was going to think, I was going to learn, I was going to strategize as this, so that when I became in the position, it wouldn't be something that was new to me. It'd be new to everybody else that's around me. But for me, it's like, oh, I've been doing this. It's just now I'm being recognized externally for the gifts, the skills, and talents that I've been able to display over time based on the experiences and the things that I have gotten out of it. And so the mindset is really just the discipline that it really takes, having the emotional intelligence and being rooted in faith and something that you believe in, when the chips are down, when those challenges do come, and it's just you. And you may not have someone you can reach out to at the very moment. But are you grounded in something that you can tap into that will stir up the gift in you to continue to move forward?
Man, that is well said. From being rooted in something that you believe in, having discipline and emotional intelligence. But you said something that is really, really powerful. And that is to operate in the position or whatever capacity that you want to be in before you're in it. That is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So you practice, you do the things, you display the habits, the work ethic, the commitment, the leadership qualities before you become the director. So you are the director or the president, whatever it is, that an individual wants to develop those habits and operate within those habits before sorry, the position. Man, that is powerful, and that can be a game changer for a lot of people, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us. Once we get that, because that is really critical,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we have the desire to achieve more out of life. We should not wait until we're in the position or in the environment, because sometimes to get to that place or to get connected to the individuals who can take us to the next level,
Mm-hmm.
it's for those people to see us operating within the qualities that they would like to see their leader operating in, or their head coach, or their superintendent, or whatever it is. Man, that is really powerful, and that's a great reminder. And it's so good that you bring it up, because I've heard the saying some years ago. I don't remember what I was listening to, and that's what the individual was saying. He was saying, man, you have to start being. And I think Eric Thomas said all the time,
Mm-hmm.
you have to start being the person before you become the person to the world,
Mm-hmm.
because you need to be first. And then the world will acknowledge, who you become.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a matter of time before the world see who you are. But you have been displaying the habits and the qualities that will take it to the next level. Man, that is really powerful and a great reminder, and a great way to come to the top of the hour of today's conversation. So we are almost at the end of today's conversation, but I can tell you this is not our last conversation. And because we need to have these conversations often,
Yes.
not just for ourselves, but for the people who we are here to impact, because we don't know where those individuals are,
Hmm.
because those people that you're supposed to reach are your story. I may connect with them, and through this conversation, you get to connect with those people who I may be connected to, but they would not get to you if we don't have this conversation or hear your story
Hmm.
and how you have navigated your journey. But before we get to the end of today's conversation, and even my final question, but where can the listeners find you and support the work that you're doing to make a difference?
Yes, they can find me here in Cleveland. But no, so the work I do, here at the Urban League of Greater Cleveland, you can find us online at ulcleveland.org. Me personally, I have been on a little bit, I guess you could say, of a social media hiatus for the past couple of years, and that was for my own mental. Um, and but I'm on LinkedIn. I look to return to social media eventually. And so, that's how you can find me either through the Urban League, or you can find me through LinkedIn and figure out how you can connect with me in some capacity. I'm always finding ways to, be a part of something and travel. So I'm still involved in the NBA in some capacity. I work all-star games and, do things with the junior NBA. Have a couple things that I'm working on, to really get out in the community. So yeah, very, very, very easy to find, very easy to connect. And I love connecting with people, especially those who are looking to do, similar work, or are doing similar work of really empowering our young people, because they really need it, and they need to see, people like us, Dr. Cross, in different positions, different arenas, being able to just pour out the wisdom and knowledge that and experience that we, been able to gain, but then also listening um, from them of exactly, what they need from us as their older males and elders.
Agree, agree. So my final question before we end today: what message do you want to leave with the next generation of Black men about defining their own journey?
The message I will want to leave you with is the same message that my father left with me. Whatever you do, be the best at it. Let no one outwork you. It takes no talent to work hard, none whatsoever. And so if you have the work ethic, um, the saying is, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So some of us have been blessed with gifts, skills, and talents, and we choose not to work and develop that discipline, and because some things just come naturally for us. And so, continue to work at that. And education comes in all different forms. College is one way, which is a great way to expose yourself not only to knowledge, but also knowledge of people, because you'll be surrounded by, people that you wouldn't necessarily bump into each and every day. And it's a lot of cliche sayings, but I stand by them. Your network is your net worth.
Yeah,
And so going back to what we talked about earlier, putting yourself in position and being who it is you want to, become, and operating in that. If you want to, be a doctor, you need to start talking with some doctors. If you want to become a millionaire, if you want to, own a business, if you want to run an organization, you need to start surrounding yourself around people who do those very things and educating yourself in those spaces. And that can look like, education in different, formats, especially with, all of us have the power of the phone now. Something that we didn't have. We had to go to the library. we
yeah,
had to actually open up books and things like that. And
right.
now, young people have just at the click of a button, they can get some information. And so use it, to your advantage. But definitely, you know, find your purpose. Find your purpose of what something that you would do every single day, and money wouldn't be your driving force. Um, but that you could do every day, and it would, fulfill you and satisfy you. And once you do that and you chase your purpose and you find yourself in your purpose, then you'll have that success.
Man, well said, well said. And for those who are here with us, I want to say thank you for joining us again on another conversation. And just to remind you, and as Mr. Haynes said, whatever you do, be the best at it. And it doesn't take talent to work hard. We can work hard regardless of the level of talent we have. And sometimes, you can always, not really always, but you can outwork the person who may be more talented than you if you're willing to work hard. So again, I just want to say thank you for those who are here. The Black Male Impact is where positive changes are inspired. We always bring guests that will share insights and perspective that we all can benefit from as we navigate our life's journey. Thank you again for being here.